not sure if we're live yet or not. YouTube takes a minute. And I got this big old screen in front of me and I can't see anything until it goes away. So hopefully I am going to be live. There we go. We're live. Okay. Good deal. All right. I jumped on just a couple of minutes early here so that we had a second to make sure that our technology worked this time. For those of you that weren't here last time, we blew up right here at the beginning, and we're already doing better than we were last time. So good sign here. All right. Okay. So let's just manage a few things here. So I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller for a minute. Nope. Smaller. There we go. Smaller. Perfect. All right. I know that we had 8 or 10 people that were waiting. There we go. We've got 20 people already in the group. So let's check the time. It is 6:30. So let's kind of get things rolling along. Okay. Hi guys, welcome. Excited to be here today and to do another workshop for you for winter and fall gardening. And this should be a lot of fun tonight. We're going to talk about how to protect your crops from cold. Okay, so let's say hello first. If you guys want to just jump into the chat and say hi, who are you, where are you from, what's your garden zone, what's the weather like in the winter time? Because we are talking about winter gardening here, so what's the weather like in the winter time? And okay, and my assistant, by the way, says that it's a little quiet, so everybody turn it up because I'm not sure I can do anything about that. I'll try and talk a little bit louder. Hi, Melissa and Alicia and Carly and Cheryl, all here from New Jersey, Illinois. All right, Melissa, I'm trying here. Let me see. There isn't any adjustments that I can make. It's all controlled by YouTube. So, okay. Love's Garden is from Whitby. Cindy from New Jersey. Okay, great. Good job, guys. All right. Anybody else? Melissa. Melissa, is the volume any better? I'm going to try and make sure I talk loud. All my sensors are saying it's okay, so hopefully it's all right. Texas, and Yvonne is from Sacramento. Great. Good job, guys. All right, so let's kind of talk about what's going on. One thing I did want to mention to all of you is hang around because at the end of the presentation I'm going to talk to you guys about a special offer, also a free course that you can get if you take advantage of the offer as well. So I want to make sure you hang around. Not planning on going super long. I'm not one for big hour-and-a-half long workshops or anything like that. We'll probably go. Last time we did one I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, and we went 37 minutes. Kind of thinking we'll probably kind of zoom in about that same level tonight. And again, it depends on questions. Now, as we go through, I have a hard time. There's so many things going on. I got my phone over here. I've got the lights shining in my face. I've got the feed over here. So here's what's going to happen. My lovely assistant, Michaela, is keeping track of the feed. And so if you guys have questions, go ahead and ask them in the feed, and Michaela is going to send them to me via my phone. But we're going to hold all of the questions for the most part until the end. So we're going to go here for about 20-25 minutes. Then we'll talk a little bit about the year-round gardening course, and then I'm going to answer questions. So we'll do a Q&A session for you. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the feed. Michaela is going to be keeping track of all of those, and she'll kind of get a list together. And if we have any that are kind of duplicates or anything like that, then she'll put those, kind of combine them up together. So she's my lovely assistant, and she will be kind of watching over things for us tonight. All right, so we are going to talk tonight about winter protection. That's what this workshop is about, and we're going to cover 4 different topics tonight. We're going to talk about, first off, the timing of planting. I want to talk about how you're going to protect your crops during the wintertime, but you need to have a little bit of advice on actually when to plant. And so I'll give you a little bit of a target on when to plant and a few ideas for things that you can be planting both for the fall and all the way into the winter. Then we're going to talk about fabric row covers, we'll talk about mini hoop houses, and then we'll talk about cold frames, okay? So let me just really quick so that nobody gets frustrated with me. Today's class is not really for container gardeners. So year-round gardening is meant for people that are growing either in raised beds or in traditional flatbed gardens. Container gardens don't do really well for year-round gardening because they're so exposed to the elements that it's a little bit of a struggle. If you're going to try these ideas, you need a fairly decent amount of space. I would say that you need at least one 4 by 8 foot bed that you can either put a hoop house or a cold frame over. And then we're going to be talking mostly about those of you that live in cold winter zones all the way up to zone 9. So if you get frost, you're going to get something out of this course today. Okay, so if you have frost at all, then the things we're going to talk about will help you. Okay, now at the end of I'm going to go for about 20-25 minutes talking and teaching you guys, and then at the end I have an offer for you on our year-round gardening master course, which is open for new students. If that offends you, me teaching you and then asking you to buy something, then this isn't the right place for you to be either. So I just want to make sure that that's clear up front, so that you guys know we're gonna go for about 25 minutes of instruction, and then I'll take about 5 minutes talk about the year-round gardening course, and then we'll do the Q&A. Okay? All right. So let's get started. Who am I? So my name is Rick Stone, and I am the founder of the Gardening Academy, and I'm also the principal author of Our Stony Acres, and you guys are watching this on the Our Stony Acres YouTube channel. So I'm also a master gardener and have been so for coming up on 10 years. I think maybe it's only 8 years. I think I graduated from that program in 2012, so 8 years. And my wife and I have been gardening for 23 years together. Before that, we gardened with our parents and grandparents, etc. So we come from gardening stock and love to grow our own food. And I have been growing in the winter time for 11 years now. So this will be actually our 12th winter that we have grown in the winter. And we live in zone 6, and we have had something to harvest from our garden every day of the year, 365 days a year since May of 2009. So that's kind of the potential that the season extension has for you, if you're trying to do this. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk today about some affordable methods. We're not going to touch, and a lot of what I'm going to teach you will also apply to those great big tall hoop houses or to greenhouses, okay? But I'm not a big fan of either because they take up a lot of space and they're also expensive to build. And so I'm looking for things that are affordable. Fabric row cover, which is really going to help extend your growing season, you can get for $20 a piece. You can build mini hoop houses for maybe as cheap as $25 or $30. Cold frames are a little bit more expensive depending on what materials you use. If you went with all new lumber and plexiglass and things like that, they might be $125, $150. If you're using recycled stuff, you could probably get away with quite a bit less than that. But I'm trying to make these affordable so that everybody can do them, and we don't have to we don't have to have a greenhouse, we don't have to have a giant hoop or something like that. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So the first thing though that I want to do is I want to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what and when you can be planting for fall and winter harvest. And surprisingly, the reason why we're doing these winter gardening workshops in July is because for quite a few of you, planting time is actually coming up very quickly. So we live in zone 6. Our first frost is October 1st, which means we're actually going to start planting our fall and winter crops on August 1st. 2 weeks from right now, we'll be starting to plant, okay? So that's why we're doing it now. So let's kind of break it down when you're going to be planting. So first off, if you're going to be putting transplants in, This would be for fall harvested plants like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, anything like that. You're going to be putting those in about 6 weeks before your first frost. Okay, so for example, I'll kind of use my garden as an example all the way through here. Our first frost is around October 1st, which means the broccoli and the cabbage and all of that is going to be transplanted out as transplants in the garden about the middle of August, okay, 6 weeks before that first frost. Now, when we start talking about things that we're going to be planting by seed, so lettuce and spinach and carrots and things like that, you want to start planting those about 8 weeks before your first frost. So for us, again, August 1st. Now, the other thing is, we all have our favorites that we usually like to grow in the the spring, things like broccoli, things like spinach and lettuce, and all of those we can grow again in the fall. But the one thing that I want you to be aware of is your favorite varieties are going to mature differently in the fall. You need to add at least 15 days to your maturity date. So if you have a lettuce that normally is ready to eat in about 45 days, in the fall, it's probably going to be more like 60 days. Your broccoli that's ready in 65 days is probably going to be more like 80 days before it's ready. So you just need to recognize in the fall, maturity dates are a little bit different. And the reason why is because in the spring, our daylight is going up, 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 right? So the days are getting longer and longer and longer. In the fall, the days are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And that lack of sunlight is what causes our plants to mature later than they normally would. Okay? All right, so here's a few ideas for you. Now, overall, there's about 30 crops that you can grow either in the fall or winter, and then kind of back flip to early spring again. And I'm going to give you maybe 15 or so tonight that you can look at. These fall planted crops, these would be ones that you're going to, like the first 5 on the list: broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and kohlrabi. All of those you are going to plant from transplants, and you're going to be putting those in about 6 weeks before your first frost. Beets, turnips, and lettuce, you're going to plant by seed, and those you're going to go about 8 weeks before your first frost, okay? And all of those are going to be ready for fall harvest. Depending on when you're planting, you're going to start harvesting those sometime in October or November, and they'll all be done before the really, really cold weather comes, because all of those fall crops are actually, they're frost tolerant, but they're not freeze resistant forever. So broccoli can handle a little bit of frost, for a few nights, but when temperatures really start getting down below about 25 degrees at night and we start getting hard freezes, then all of these crops kind of start falling apart. And so we're going to plant these in the fall, and we're going to harvest these guys first, okay? And then there are some winter crops as well. So these are, you'll notice, are either root crops or they're going to be leafy greens. So all the crops that we're going to grow all the way through the winter are mostly leafy greens or carrots and parsnips, okay? So we're looking at kale, spinach, mosh, which mosh is also sometimes called corn salad, lamb's lettuce as well. Sometimes people refer to it as that. It's a really nice kind of nutty tasting lettucey type plant. A little bit different than lettuce. It's not like a cut and come again. You harvest the whole plant, and they're only about yay so big when you harvest them. But very, very good crop. Arugula, Swiss chard, all of those are going to do really well all the way through the winter. And then carrots and parsnips, which are root crops, are also going to do great in the wintertime, okay? So, and all of these on this list, with maybe the exception of arugula. Arugula is maybe not quite as hardy as some of the others, but all of the others, with a cold frame and some extra row cover and things like that, even in the really cold places, like people that live in zones 4 and maybe even down as low as zones 3, ought to be able to get some of those. Now you're going to have very limited numbers, where there's 30 for some of us that we can plant. Those of you that live in zone 3 are going to be limited to maybe kale, spinach, Swiss chard, mosh, and maybe carrots, okay? So the colder you get, the smaller your crop selection is. All right? Okay, so that kind of gives you hopefully some ideas of what to plant and when to plant. Again, your target date really starts about 8 weeks before your first frost in the fall. And so you're going to start then. And you can sneak, like for example, again, our target date is August 1st. I've gotten crops in as late as August 21st and still gotten a decent winter crop, okay? Not maybe as good as if I had planted it on August 1st, but it was still a pretty good one. So you've got a little bit of a window there, about 3 weeks to get things in. Anything after that 3-week window, so for example, we'll plant some spinach again on September 1st, which is about 4 weeks before our first frost. That is not really intended for fall harvest. That's intended for overwintering and an early crop in the spring. So as you sneak closer to that frost date, your maturity is not going to happen until the spring. And so if you want it to be ready in the fall and in the wintertime, then you need to kind of target that 8 weeks to be your starting date, okay? All right, and the idea here is that those crops, we're going to bring them to maturity before the really cold weather settles in. And for me, really cold weather means starting at about 25 degrees Fahrenheit at night, okay? And then it's really cold when we start having only freezing temperatures in the daytime. So for us, that starts happening, you know, around the 1st of December, maybe middle of December. Some of you, it's going to be a lot different than that, but you know, it's just kind of vary. But we're going to use these 3 methods that we're now going to talk about to basically, we'll mature those crops and then we put them in cold storage. So they're basically fresh still and growing in your cold frames and your hoop houses and under your fabric row covers, but we have them in cold storage and for the winter, basically. Okay, so that's kind of the idea that we've got going on here. All right, so let's talk first about fabric row covers. And I stepped away here so that I can actually show you. I brought some. Let me make me big for a second here. So we're going to stretch this out. So this is fabric row cover, and I've got a great big piece here. This one's about 6 feet wide total by about 10 feet long. And when I talk about row covers for winter gardening, we're talking about heavy fabric row covers. So I'm going to put my face behind this. You can't see me through it very well. This is a heavy fabric row cover. They're often called frost blankets. And you're looking, when you're buying, you want to be looking for something that is going to have a weight rating. So they'll usually have a weight rating, and you're looking for something that is going to be like 1.5 to 2 ounces per square yard or square meter. And so that will usually be in the description. If it's a good, decent quality, it will tell you that. And there are some that are much lighter than that, you know, 1 ounce per square yard or something like that. We don't want those. We want the heavier stuff that's 1.5 to 2 ounces per square yard. And it will also usually tell you that it's got frost protection or freeze protection down to 24 to maybe 26 degrees, somewhere in that range. So that's what we're looking for when we are choosing our heavy fabric row cover. And this stuff is super handy. It's also very durable. So this piece is one of the original pieces. Look how grungy and gross it is. My wife would probably kill me if she knew I had it in the house. But it's very sturdy and holds up forever. This piece is 11 years old. I bought this the first winter in 2009. I bought this piece of fabric row cover. So it lasts forever. So your investment is, you know, fantastic. And you can get these for $20 or less. Just look on Amazon. You can look most of the big online nurseries, you know, Johnny Seed, Territorial Seed, Baker Creek, all of those guys usually will carry those. Or you can just buy it on Amazon, or a lot of local nurseries in the colder areas especially are buying those as well. Okay, so we can use heavy fabric row cover as its own protection, as you can see here in my, let me turn me off for a second here so you can see this picture. So you can see here I've got some beds covered, and that works really well to cover those beds like that. And will provide, especially for the hardier crops, will provide a lot of protection. You can use these for protecting things through the winter, especially like kale. Kale under a fabric row cover will last the whole winter in really cold places. You know, maybe as low as zones 5, zones 4. You can get kale to survive under a fabric row cover. The other thing that's really nice, again, is these guys are perfect for extending your warm season crops growing as well. So it's just, you got to have some of these. I use these so much all winter long, and then I use them in the fall and in the spring to protect my warm season crops from frost as well. I've used them quite often to extend my tomato season by 3 or 4 weeks. We always seem to have like an early frost, and then it warms right up again. You know, so we'll go down to 29 degrees one night, and then for the next 3 weeks we're back in the 50s at night, and my tomatoes continue to ripen if I've protected them from the frost. So those heavy fabric row covers are really, really nice for that. Okay, the next thing on our list is mini hoop houses, and let me turn me off again here so that you guys can see. This is a picture of one of our mini hoop houses that we've built over the years, and they do a really, really nice job of protecting your crops in the wintertime. They're nice because they're easy to take down and put back up, and you can do what I call kind of pop-up ones where, you know, I know that a cold spell's coming and my broccoli's not quite ready in the fall, so I'll throw a hoop house over it, and that will protect them, and I'll just kind of improvise one and then take it down later. Usually it will offer much better protection than the fabric row cover from wind and from cold, and so it's kind of a step up in what you are actually going to be accomplishing as you're trying to protect your crops. I like to do simple, and I like to cover them with just inexpensive painter's plastic, 5 mil or better. So don't go with the really thin like 1 mil or 2 mil stuff. You want to go at least 5 mil, maybe 7 mil, so that you can keep that weather out as you go along. So this is a look at one of my hoop houses and how to build it. And like I said earlier, you can get away with $30 building one of these guys. You're going to get 4 pieces of 1/2-inch PVC, and then you are going to put a ridge pole on. So you can see I put just a wooden ridge pole. It just some inexpensive thin wood. It adds some rigidity to the structure. And then if you've got raised beds, you're just going to simply put it in and drive it into the ground of the raised beds, and then maybe throw a screw in each one of those PVC pipes to kind of add some structure. If you don't have raised beds, then it's really easy to just get some like 12-inch pieces of rebar, pound that into the ground, and then slip those hoops over the top. Then you're just going to cover it up with plastic, and you can see I don't get too high tech with it. I cover it up and secure it down on the sides, and then I leave the ends open and just use some clamps to close up those ends, and then that's where I harvest from, is from the ends, and just kind of work my way to the middle from either end. So that seems to work out really good. And hoop houses work best, let me turn myself back on now. Hoop houses work best in kind of the moderately cold areas. So if you live in zone 8, a hoop house is really all you need. And in fact, a hoop house is a luxury probably for you if you live in zone 8. If you live in zone 9, you probably don't even need a hoop house. You probably could just get away with fabric row covers to grow all of those crops that we talked about earlier. If you live in zone 7, a hoop house might make it happen for you, but if you have a really cold winter, then you might not quite have enough protection in zone 7. And then when it gets really cold with these hoop houses, so you know, when you have your really cold snaps in January and February, then you could also take some of your fabric row cover and throw that inside the hoop house over your crops for some extra protection. Now if you live in zones 3 through 6, you're only going to be able to use hoop houses for the super hardy plants. So things like kale, mosh, Swiss chard, bok choy, carrots, things like that that are really hardy and really stand up well to the cold. You'll be able to grow those in a hoop house. But if you live in zones 3 through 6, a lot of the more tender plants, you're going to want to do a cold frame, which is what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so let me turn me off again here so you can see the picture. So a cold frame is basically a simple box with some type of glass lid. Okay, so you're actually in this picture, you're looking at 3 cold frames, 3 of my cold frames. So we put them all just end to end in our 24-foot beds. And cold frames, because they're a wooden box with a glass top, they actually offer kind of the best level of protection. The most protection that's available to you comes from the cold frames. They can be a little bit more expensive to build because you're using lumber. You're going to build these and then put them on top of your beds. So you're not going to incorporate them into the bed like you would a hoop house. Instead, you're going to put them on top. And then, sometimes those glass tops can get a little on the expensive side. So this is a look at one right after I built it, before we put it out in the garden. Again, a wooden box, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lids. Each one is made out of plexiglass with a wooden frame. And the other thing that you should do when you're building a cold frame is you should put some angle on it. So if you'll notice the front of this cold frame, so that on the left hand side, is 6 inches high. The back, which is up here on the right corner, is 12 inches high. So that puts some angle to the cold frame. Okay, so that helps with the sunlight getting in, and it also helps the snow to roll off, the rain to roll off, and to kind of keep those tops lasting longer as well. So you should definitely try and put an angle on those. Okay, and cold frames in zones 8 and 9, cold frames are totally an overkill. Okay, you could use them, but you're going to be using them more to like harden plants off early in the spring and things like that. But for winter gardening in zones 8 and 9, a cold frame is probably overkill. Zones 6 and 7, perfect zones for a cold frame. You'll be able to grow lots of stuff all winter long. Zone 7, your options are just really, really, really open to you there. And then for those of you that live in zones 3 and 4, and I left 5 off, I apologize, guys. I didn't put 5 on the list. These are a must-have. So if you want to grow in the winter time, you need to plan on having a cold frame to get those crops to survive the winter. And you'll also want to be putting fabric row cover inside during the coldest months of the year. So zones 3 and 4, you're going to have fabric row cover in there probably from December until March. In those really cold areas. So cold frame tops, they don't have to be specifically out of wood. You could, I've seen people that have done like bales of straw and then put windows or things like that over the top. Also, I use plexiglass. But you don't have to use plexiglass. You can use like old storm doors. You could use old windows. Those would actually be a little bit better if you live in a windy area because they're heavier. But it is important that they're clear, and it is fairly important that they're also solid, and can handle the weight load. Because a hoop house, the snow is going to fall off, but a cold frame, even if you put a really steep angle on it, you're still not going to be able to get that snow to fall off. And so if you were to make those lids out of like plastic, then that weight, that snow is going to weight down, and it's going to tear through your fabric tear through your top and get down. The snow is going to get down on your crops and everything. So those tops really do need to be solid and made out of something solid, whether it's plexiglass or glass. Glass obviously is much easier to break than plexiglass, but if you've got people have leftover doors and windows and they've done remodeling and things like that, that's a great way to build cold frames. If you just build it to whatever shape you've got. If you've got an old sliding glass door that you've removed from your house, build a cold frame that can sit on. and away you go. So super good option. You don't have to, mine with the plexiglass and the lumber, mine were about $125 when I built them 10 years ago. One of them's 11 years old, the other 3 are 10 years old, and it probably a little bit more now. Costs have gone up a little bit, so I would imagine you're going to be somewhere 150 to 175 to build the exact one I have, but you can totally improvise. The idea and the concept of the cold frame is that you get a good, solid, well-insulated wooden side with a glass top of some kind that will allow sunlight in when there's sunlight available and will keep the cold and the weather out. Okay? All right. So that, I think, is about it. So we're about half hour in. That's good. So let's, I'm going to have Michaela start compiling questions. So let me just, give me just a second here, guys, while I get my phone up. That didn't work out. That was all supposed to be ready for me. Okay, so it looks like Kayla's starting to work on those. So we'll kind of go through what we have here. Now, so all of this stuff I learned over a bunch of years, reading a million books, watching a million YouTube videos like this one, and then a lot of experience, being out there. Like I say, this will be our 12th winter that we have grown, and I had a lot of hit and miss to begin with, and crops that I thought were going to be okay that weren't, and things like that. And so I really kind of struggled, and that's how I learned how to do it. And so I have created a course called the Year-Round Gardening Master Course that makes it easier for you guys to learn how to do the whole year-round gardening thing. So the Year-Round Gardening Master Course is a 5.5-hour long course that includes 10 different modules that we go through, and we talk about taking care of your soil. We talk about the crops that you're going to grow in great detail. We go through them all individually and talk about them. We cover cold frames and hoop houses and fabric row cover. We cover spring and fall gardening. There's just a lot of information packed into this course. And then on top of that, let me move myself over here. On top of that, we have some fun features that we added last year and are going to continue this year. So the course is currently open for new students, and we are accepting new students only until tomorrow night. So till July 15th, we close at midnight on July 15th, and that is when we will finish up for this season. And then as soon as July 15th hits, we're going to start a weekly study guide. So we take about 2 of the modules and we put those together and go through and study those. And then at the end of each week, for the next 4 weeks, we have a live Q&A session. We do those in our Facebook group, and then I record those and they get uploaded to the course as well. So if you're not a Facebook person, you'll still get the opportunity. So along with the 5.5 hours of pre-recorded course, you're going to get the weekly study guides. You're going to get a weekly Q&A for me for the next 4 weeks, and then you'll get to become a member of the private Facebook group as well. So ongoing access to this course is $69. And when I say ongoing, that means you only pay once. Okay, so you're going to pay once, and then every year when we do this course, you'll still have access to it. You'll be able to watch the Q&As. You'll be part of the Facebook group. So it's an ongoing thing. But because you have watched this tonight, I'm going to knock $10 off the price. So for $59, you can buy this 5.5-hour course with all of that bonus material, and join us in what's turning out to be a really good group. We already have 60 people that have joined this year. I'm anticipating last day is usually the biggest day, so I'm thinking we'll probably add another 20-25 people. So we're going to be pretty close to 100 people this year. Really good group. We're already interacting in the Facebook group, people asking questions, watching the content. So it's really, really fun. But we're only open for the next 30 hours. We close at midnight on July 15th, so you guys need to hurry. Okay, and if you sign up using the link down below, so down in the description of this video, there's a link that will take you out to the course. It'll give you the $10 off, and it will also alert me to give you a bonus course. So we have a 5 garden crops to grow for your food storage course. It's about an hour-long course that I created, and you guys can get that one for free as well if you sign up for this tonight, okay? So let me just really quick, I just want to really quick run you through what's going to happen. If you click on the link, it's going to take you right here to this page on the year-round gardening. Well, it's on the online gardening school and in the year-round gardening course. And you're going to click the enroll for $69. Yours will say $59 because you're getting that discount. You'll come up here. Let me turn me off so that you guys can see everything. You're going to put in your account information, you're going to add your email address and your name, and then if you would please make sure you click the box to allow educational and promotional announcements or emails. That's how I communicate with you guys, so I need to be able to email you. Then you're just going to put in your credit card information or your PayPal info and click enroll. And then once you click enroll, it's going to ask you to set up a password, and then anytime you come back to the online gardening school, it's all online. It's a platform on the online gardening school. You'll be able to log in there and then watch that course as many times as you want, okay? All right, so let's look at questions. Let me get me turned back on, and I'm going to refer over here. Okay, so here we go. We've got a couple of questions. First, Love's Garden is asking, does the top of the cold frame have to be glass? Okay, so no, it doesn't have to be glass, but again, like I said earlier, it definitely needs to be kind of, like something plexiglass or glass related. You want it to be rigid so that it supports the snow and then also insulates from the snow. So there's a lot more insulation value to glass or plexiglass than there is to plastic. And with a cold frame, we're going for the best insulation value that we can give it. And then to follow up with that, Edith is saying, yeah, could it be plastic? Okay, and yeah, again, you don't want to use just like the thin plastic. And the reason why I say that is I have tried it, guys. So in fact, even last year, I had a couple of my lids that were plastic because I had a windstorm and I forgot to secure my lids down one night, and we had a windstorm and I broke 2 of them. And so I covered those with plastic, and it just didn't work out. The snow just weights that down, and it breaks it, and then the snow was leaking in, and then it freezes and turns into this big chunk instead of sliding off on that harder structure, okay? So yeah, we definitely want to do that. Yes, Anne, I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear. So Anne is asking, do you put the taller wood in the frame facing the sun or away from the sun? You actually want the angle to be facing the sun. So the tall side will be, for those of us that are in the northern hemisphere, the tall side will be on the north, the short side will be on the south. That will put your angle so that it's towards the sun, and then that lets more sun into the cold frame, and then it also allows the snow and the water to run off of your cold frame and not pile up quite as much. Now, when it snows really hard, you're going to get a pile of snow on top, but then when it melts, it'll run off. Okay, so you want the taller side to be to the north, the shorter side to be to the south, so that the angle is facing, so that you get more sun coming in. If that makes sense. Okay. All right. Renee is asking, do you need to cover garlics, onions, and shallots in Zone 7A? Okay, Renee, in Zone 7A, garlic and shallots, both of those, I will plant those in the fall. You can plant shallots in the spring if you want. They'll do better, though, if you plant them in the fall. And the only covering I do is I will usually cover those with some leaves. So I'll just take some leaves, run over them with my lawnmower first, and then just kind of cover them like a mulch on that. And then I just let them come up through that mulch, and that helps improve the soil. Onions, in Zone 7A, you're probably not going to be planting onions until spring. So you're going to want to wait, and probably in 7A, you're going to be planting your onions sometime in early April, maybe late March. But you're going to hold off for the springtime with those. Do leeks or bunching onions work? This is Claire asking this. Do leeks or bunching onions work for fall and winter growing with protection? Yes, both of those are good crops to grow, especially bunching onions will do well because there's no expectation with a bunching onion that you're going to get a bulb, right? So there's not enough sun to cause your onions to bulb, and so any onions that you plant for fall or winter are going to they're going to just kind of sit over the winter, and they'll be green onions. And leeks, if you get the leeks planted early enough, you'll get a decent sized leek. But you can also kind of plant those, fairly intensely if you want, and kind of treat them a little bit like you would a green onion as well. I would cover them, but with maybe at least a hoop house. But I know a lot of people, especially leeks, a lot of people just leave them out in the cold and go out and pry them out of the frozen ground all winter long. The reason why I would cover them is because it becomes a little bit more convenient to harvest them, if that makes sense. So it's a little easier to harvest if they're covered with at least a fabric row cover or a hoop house or a cold frame, because then the ground isn't going to freeze quite as hard underneath, if that makes sense. All right, Melissa is asking, okay, Melissa, does the class cover any container gardening? I've got new citrus and passion fruit and lemon mire and key limes that you don't think you can plant in the ground. Melissa, the class does not cover citrus fruits, okay? So the focus of the class is helping those of us that have freezing winter temperatures to have something still to harvest during the winter time. And for the most part, that is going to be leafy greens. We'll have a fall harvest of cabbage and broccoli and Brussels sprouts and kohlrabi and things like that. But then we're gonna be focusing mostly on lettuces, spinach, Swiss chard, mosh, arugula. There's a whole bunch of exotics, and then some of the root crops like we'll do some radishes, we'll do carrots all winter long, parsnips all winter long, beets in the fall, turnips in the fall, and maybe, depending on where you live, all winter long as well. So those are the kind of the super hardy winter crops are what we're looking at, and citrus definitely doesn't qualify as that. And so no, this course is more designed for getting people that have really cold, freezing temperatures through the winter with some food actually in their gardens. Okay. All right, that looks like we are about done. Thank you guys for being here. We had a good crowd tonight. Just looking to see if we happen to have any kind of trailing questions. It looks like we don't. So I think we'll kind of finish that up. Remember that the link down below to join the course is only good for the next 30 hours. And the reason why it's only good for the next 30 hours is because we're closing the course on July 15th at midnight. So make sure, if you want to take advantage of that class, that you go and click that link now. And it will. I'll leave this replay up until we get to the 15th as well, so you guys can watch it. And the link will continue to stay good all the way through the 15th. So if you're watching this on the replay, you can still click that link. But we are closing. I close on July 15th. Because I want to be able to just focus. I don't want new people continually coming in. I want to take the group that joined and focus on you guys and teach you everything and really focus, and then we'll open it up again. Okay? All right, guys, that is all that I have for you for tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Make sure that while you're here, you subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends if you want. I'm happy if you want to go share a link on your Facebook page, or wherever, Instagram or wherever. I'd love to spread this around and share and help as much as I can. Okay, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you very much. Appreciate